exception.
All right, and then you can take it off. One more, and then we'll get out of slow motion. So, if you can head down further, so I actually don't see your face at all. Bring him in. Yeah, so it's like, that's to the kids. Bring him in. And then I'll have you fade out, and then they'll stand up with torches and this whole thing.
Do you want the bravado or the...
On the bring them in.
Speech?
Yeah, on the, yeah.
You want it there too?
Right, more to bring them in. And then you can just keep on, when we do the voiceover, everything more. Right, I got you tighter on this one. And now, just lean down a little bit. And action.
Now, that's what I call a likely story.
Let me listen up. That was great. One more. And action.
Now, that's what I call a likely story.
And give us a smile at the end. Okay?
Now, that's what I call a likely story.
Cut.
You worry about leaving a better planet for our kids. How about leaving better kids for our planet? Entire generation offended at everything, getting mad that a human thinks all lives matter. We don't need black or white or left or right. What we need is common sense, we need balance. We're all in the same boat, why you trying to make holes? If they sink, we sink, this is madness. I'm offended that you're offended by me taking offense. Can't build a wall, why does your house have a fence? I believe in two genders, I'm not mad at the rest. I'm just confused when a dude has a beard and some breasts. We won't always agree, nope. I don't hate all police, nope. I don't think that the system's racist, I just think the system hates people. I think fighting violence with more violence is what they want. Viruses and riots, people dying, we won't stay home. Black lives matter, all lives matter. What's all this division for? It's modern segregation, this is setting up a civil war. Burn the circus down, cause the world is...
Get a load of these two. Another one of these videos where people film themselves eating food. Yeah, this is groundbreaking content here, folks. Yeah, it's the inside of a donut. Any reason for sharing that with us? Why was that funny? No, really, why was him pointing at the donut funny? What are you trying to do, a heart? You just sort of abandoned the heart and got scared for some reason. Okay, you dropped it. Why is it a big deal? This isn't typical human behavior. I'm actually starting to wonder if these people are real. What's even more bizarre is no one in the comments finds any of this strange. I love you, family. Why? Because they eat? That's all it takes for you to love someone's entire family? If I send you a video of me eating a chicken wing, will you love my family too? Your videos are amazing. Oh yeah? Eating is amazing to this guy. What a low bar this guy has for something to be amazing. What would you consider the invention of the airplane? How are people blown away by this? I mean, do these people realize there's someone in active military duty watching this going, so this is who I'm fighting for? You guys realize you might be a contributing factor in one of our soldiers quitting? If that's the case, you're directly responsible for weakening our military. That would make you both enemies of the state. Yeah, the modern day Sonny and Cher. I mean, did I enter some alternate dimension where people across the world are blown away by people's ability to eat food? I must have accidentally walked through some wormhole in my house. Here, let me try to walk back to the room I started in and see if I still see what I'm looking at on my screen. Nope, still there. Well, I guess we're fucked.
Yes, we should.
That's up to CPAC. I think there might be about President Trump and the extent to which following January 6th, I don't believe that he should be playing a role in the future of the party or the country.
On that high note, thank you all very much.
People are tired of politics, so Facebook is reducing political content. that starting in Brazil, Indonesia, and Canada, could come to the US. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. This episode is sponsored by Surfshark. You should be using a VPN, like Surfshark, to protect yourself whenever you go online. Also, subscribe to this channel and click the notification bell on so you can be the first to watch our new episodes every week. And like our Facebook page. Speaking of Facebook, let's talk about politics. Whoa. I know what you're thinking. Chris, I'm tired of all this political talk. Can you just shut up about it? Well, fear not. Facebook will depoliticize your newsfeed for you. Why bother ignoring us when Facebook can ignore our content for you? According to Facebook, they've temporarily reduced the distribution of political content in news feed for a small percentage of people in Canada, Brazil, and Indonesia, and the US in the coming weeks. Not all political content will be reduced, of course. The CDC and the WHO are exempt, and so is content from official government agencies, but not from politicians or public officials or you. Gotta leave room to reduce content from certain folks. Actually, Trump is still banned on Facebook right now, but whether he will remain banned is up to Facebook's new oversight board. Now, Facebook said they weren't removing all political content. Their goal is to simply find a new balance of the content people want to see by experimenting with ways to limit the reach of political content in news feeds. CEO Mark Zuckerberg said that he wanted to turn down the temperature of political conversations because people don't want politics and fighting to take over their experience on Facebook. Of course, I'm glad Facebook is deciding for us what we want to see. That's why we all joined Facebook. Actually, I joined Facebook back in 2006 so I could finally poke all of my friends on the internet, and not just in real life. By the way, Facebook reducing political content is separate from the other big Facebook story going on right now involving Australia. You may have seen the news that Facebook has blocked news sharing in Australia. Unless you're in Australia and you rely on Facebook for all your news, then you probably didn't see that. But basically, Facebook is blocking Australians from sharing news links, and it's blocking everyone else in the world from seeing news from Australian media companies. That's in response to a proposed Australian law that would require tech companies like Google and Facebook to negotiate with media publishers and compensate them for content that appears on their sites. So just like everyone else in the world, Facebook doesn't want to pay for their news. And this is a situation where Facebook can't just open that paywalled news article in incognito mode. But while Facebook's fight with Australia isn't the same issue as their attempt to depoliticize the Facebook newsfeed, it runs into many of the same pitfalls. I'll explain a little bit later in the episode. But first, why is Facebook starting to reduce political content with these three countries, Canada, Brazil, and Indonesia? I'll get to that after the break.
This makes sense to, let me put it another way. It makes no sense.
Come on, man.
Welcome back. Why is Facebook censoring political content in Canada, Brazil, and Indonesia? The simple answer is fake news. But let's look a little deeper at what specific issues Facebook is depoliticizing in those countries, before they start doing it here in the US. The issues are threefold: love, death, and robots. Sorry, I meant coronavirus, race wars, and politics. That show's probably not going to make it on Netflix. Let's start by looking at Brazil. the coronavirus and President Bolsonaro. Facebook has been going full Brazilian jiu-jitsu with coronavirus information thanks to this guy here. Facebook believes Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has downplayed the coronavirus's effects, comparing it to a mild cold. But it also didn't help that he fired the Brazilian health minister last April due to public disagreements over how to respond to the coronavirus, such as social distancing. Facebook certainly didn't tolerate a president downplaying the coronavirus and distrusting the efficacy of coronavirus vaccines. Okay, that headline was a little unfair. He didn't say the Pfizer vaccine can turn people into crocodiles. He just said that if the vaccine turned you into a crocodile, Pfizer wouldn't take responsibility for it. They would just tell you after a while. Although speaking of vaccine efficacy, it turned out many months later that the Chinese vaccine that's being distributed in Brazil is only effective half the time. No word on whether it turns people into crocodiles. In any case, Bolsonaro seems okay with China's vaccine. But back to March of last year. Facebook and Instagram removed several posts showing President Bolsonaro walking around outside and not social distancing. Then in July, Facebook removed dozens of accounts linked to supporters or employees of Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro as part of an investigation into the spread of false news online. The reason why Facebook in Brazil is relevant to the US is not just because of how Facebook wants to moderate news regarding the coronavirus. Facebook had put a global block on certain accounts controlled by supporters of Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro implicated in a fake news inquiry a day after it was fined for not complying with a Brazilian Supreme Court judge's order to do so. Facebook blocked accounts they accused of hate speech. Who knows what their metric is for hate speech? But they only blocked them in Brazil, and those accounts were still accessible to foreign IP addresses. However, the Supreme Court in Brazil wanted the accounts blocked globally, and Facebook did. So Facebook is willing to block Brazilian content globally because that government told them to. What happens if the Russian government tells them to? How often are Americans going to have their Facebook experience censored by foreign governments? Could this set a dangerous precedent that affects American access to certain accounts from abroad? Next, Indonesia, fake news and racial tensions. Facebook did a lot of censoring in Indonesia back in 2019 during the elections. There was a lot of fake news and memes that Americans wouldn't understand. This is Prabowo Subianto, the main opponent who lost to President Joko Widodo in the 2019 presidential race. Not a brony as far as I'm aware. The meme was because he didn't understand what a tech unicorn was. That's a tech startup valued at more than $1 billion. One big concern ahead of the Indonesian election was how Prabowo would treat ethnic Chinese in Indonesia if he became president. This stems back to his involvement in the 1998 riots that targeted Chinese Indonesians. Facebook attempted to ease the political discourse in Indonesia, which touched on things like religion and race. Facebook was supposedly concerned with a rise in fake news in the months leading up to the election. So Facebook removed hundreds of Indonesian accounts, pages, and groups from its social network after discovering they were linked to an online group accused of spreading hate speech and fake news. Canada's parliament just accused China of committing genocide, but Prime Minister Justin Trudeau doesn't quite agree. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Today, we're going to be talking about genocide and why it's so hard to identify. It's almost as if when an authoritarian regime purposefully tries to destroy a group of people, they also want to hide the evidence and lie about it. Earlier this week, Canada's parliament declared China's treatment of the Uyghurs genocide. That's pretty significant. making Canada the second country after the US to officially use the G word. The motion was brought by Canada's Conservative Party, and Conservative Party leader Erin O'Toole said it was needed to send a clear and unequivocal signal that we will stand up for human rights and the dignity of human rights, even if it means sacrificing some economic opportunity. And while standing up for human rights shouldn't be controversial, it was very controversial. The motion passed the House of Commons by 266 to 0. Okay, that doesn't sound controversial. But more than 70 MPs either abstained or missed the vote, including Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his entire cabinet. Foreign Affairs Minister Marc Garneau was the only cabinet minister present. When it was his turn, he said he abstained on behalf of the Government of Canada. By the Government of Canada, he means the Prime Minister and the Cabinet, what the US would call the executive branch. Parliament was voting on a non-binding resolution. That means it officially recognized the genocide, but it didn't actually require the government to do anything about it. The House of Commons is just saying that they recognize the Chinese Communist Party is committing genocide. They're also calling on the IOC to move the Olympics if it doesn't stop, and for the Canadian government to officially call it genocide. Yeah, I'm going to say those last two things are probably not going to happen. You see, ahead of the vote, Justin Trudeau had called genocide an extremely loaded term. And he said, when it comes to the application of the very specific word genocide, we simply need to ensure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed before a determination like that is made. Sure, that sounds reasonable. But it's not like the House of Commons declared the Chinese Communist Party's actions against the Uyghurs a genocide just because they felt like it. Last October, a House of Commons subcommittee on international human rights declared that the actions of the Chinese Communist Party constitute genocide as laid out in the UN Genocide Convention. That was based on evidence from hearings they held in 2018 and 2020. That evidence included dozens of hours of testimony from academics, civil society, and witnesses who survived the atrocities in Xinjiang. So it sounds like they dotted some I's and crossed some of their T's there. Trudeau is right that genocide is a serious accusation to make. And that's because genocide is an evil act. After the horrors of the Holocaust, the world said, never again. But there's a problem with Trudeau not using the word genocide. I'll explain after the break.